And to me, the crux of our discussion is that we are going to fail, we are going to succeed, but with EQ, it is going to be easier.
The key purpose of emotional intelligence is knowing what to do with the bad feelings. The better you're able to identify the feeling, you're like 60% more capable of working through it because you're working from a place of knowledge of this accuracy of what you're really feeling. We empower ourselves to be in charge of our emotions when we recognize that buying time can give us an opportunity to, get a grip. Coping is good until it's not. And the healing, I always tell people, if you're comfortable, you're not growing. If part of emotional intelligence is that I can dig, and it doesn't always feel good, but I can say, why am I stressed? What is stressing me? And then I like whiskey. I'm not going to quit liking whiskey, but I can drink it now because I enjoy it, not because I need it.
Welcome to Stories and Stanza. I'm your host, Opro. I'm a writer and I created this podcast to bring you a montage of real stories that make life beautiful as poetry. Today's episode is part of the Fail With Me series. I have had a few difficult years where I felt incredibly isolated. So when I came out of it, I wanted to create a supportive space to help those going through similar challenges. In a world that celebrates success and stigmatizes anything that doesn't fit that mold, Fail With Me aims to normalize and accept failure. I explored the concept of failure from various perspectives and challenge the notion that failing is something to be ashamed of. If we can truly unpack the layers of failure, we will find key to our healing. Please join me in welcoming today's guest. Thank you.
Hi, Sara. Welcome back to Stories and Stanza. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Oprah, for having me back. I really enjoy talking to you.
Thank you, Sara, for taking the time today. And I just wanted to share this with our listeners and our audience on YouTube that uh, Sarah and I have started talking about emotional intelligence and this whole Fail With Me series about a year back. And then we started doing this podcast. And when you explained this to me, it took some time for the ideas to sink in. But now I reflect back last 1 year of my life, and it has been nothing short of amazing. So everything in my life has improved, and I am honored to call this a life-changing experience with your help and guidance that I feel I have started a new life. And I am honored to have you back on the show.
Thank you. You know, the thing about emotional intelligence and the reason I really am grateful to be able to talk about it is that it is so powerful. I mean, you've experienced firsthand the difference it makes in your life and how you think about yourself, how you treat other people, how you work, how you play, how you parent, how you behave or engage as a husband. I mean, when we have emotional intelligence, it is a powerful tool that really is not, you can't replicate it with anything else. Emotional intelligence is this thing that just gives you this impetus to do better, be better, grow, learn, all of it. So it has been a privilege to watch you, the changes that you've had because of it.
Thank you. And in today's episode, we uh, are going to do a recap of what we previously discussed. And this is our first video episode, which is going to YouTube. So I am really excited. And I would be doing a lot of more future episodes with you, and we will be taking emotional intelligence into different spheres of life. So this episode is very important. So anyone who has not listened to you talk about it before, they can get an understanding of what we have previously covered, so that they can follow this as a series. So, and also, I would like to tell the audience that the whole concept of fail with me started from my discussion with you. That I told you that I have this idea. Would you like to come to my podcast? And you joined, and we did a few episodes. And now I think I have about at least 20 or 20, 20 to 30 episodes done, combining audio and video from guests all over the world throughout the year. And that is really, really great.
Well, you have just run with it. It's like I say, it's been super exciting to watch.
And I wanted to say that in as we do more and more episodes, we will kind of create some handouts or some literature for anyone who can refer to it. And when I did this the first time, the challenge was where to put it. How do I share it with people? So now what I've found out is I'll be creating these handouts in Canva, and then we will put these links in the episode description, so that
Oh,
we can anyone can take a look and see what we are talking about. You can anyone can print it out in an A4 sheet and keep it with themselves and refer to it
I'm
as a
actually looking
note.
for one that I want to be sure to send you. Uh, and we can talk about it today too. Because the handouts that you have added are so powerful. The ones you've made and the ones that you've let me share, the feeling wheel and some other stuff. So I have a new one for you. So
Wonderful.
yeah,
So we'll
thank you.
put those details in episode descriptions. So anyone who wants to understand what ideas are we talking about. So the episode is usually between 30 to 45 minutes long, but those handouts, anyone you can, it's a free resource. You can download it, you can print it, and refer to it. You can share it with someone who wants to look at it. So that will be an added work on our part to prepare those things, but we are confident that it is going to be helpful reference. So the first thing we would like to talk about is the whole Fail With Me series. And I will share what I came to this series with, and how you helped me understand failure and link it with emotional intelligence. And we'll refer to some interesting tools that we have covered in our first three episodes. So the idea with which I came to Fail With Me was I was going through a phase of my life where I felt nothing was working out. And I felt that the thought of failure is kind of weighing on me. And whenever I try to read something motivational, something inspirational, and any self-help book, I felt they were a lot preachy. They said, "Oh, you're doing this wrong. You have to do this to get it right." And all my life I've been a rebel. I didn't kind of sit with that idea that, oh, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And I thought that if I write about my story, I'll call it Fail With Me. That is how I came up with the name, and talk openly about failure. And then when I started talking to you, you give this flavor of emotional intelligence and help me understand failure in a better way. And to me, the crux of our discussion is that we are going to fail, we are going to succeed, but with EQ, it is going to be easier to handle failures and try something different. So it's basically changing the perspective and unlearning the biases we grow up with. So that is how Fail With Me has shaped up. So the first question, back to you, Sarah, and you have told this in our show before. Can you, for our audience, help us understand failure and how we can handle failure? in a more better way.
Of course, thank you. And uh, the the whole concept of failure really goes back to how we're raised. Some people don't struggle with failure because of how their parents responded to it. But for most of us, when we fail, we are either wrong or we are stupid or we have, screwed up or, why did you do that? And there's this whole litany of things that come into us from outside, whether it's our parents or our teachers or at church or whatever, that gives us a sense that we are bad when we make a mistake, when we fail. Not that we made a mistake, but that we are intrinsically bad. And so failure then is a descriptor of us, not of what we did. I didn't fail, I am a failure. And so we internalize these mistakes or errors, or we didn't win something, or we didn't achieve a goal. And then we identify it that not that I failed to achieve my goal, but I am a failure. So how that ties into emotional intelligence is part of emotional intelligence is honoring and recognize how we feel, but recognizing that we're not the thing we're feeling. I have anger. I have sadness. I have shame. Not I am angry, or I am a failure, or I am something to be ashamed of. And so emotional intelligence helps you walk through failures, disappointments, situations that make you feel ugly things, and helps you reframe those, as you say, helps you put them in a different perspective to recognize that it's how you feel and your feelings are valid. But the important thing is what happens next.
And I am glad to share with our listeners today that the results that we can get from emotional intelligence can be make us better at our work, can make us better at our relationships, can make us better at our own health and wellness and our aspirations. So it's not limited to one direction, but it is multidimensional.
And let me also, I'd love to just, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead, I'd like to quantify or qualify or explain what emotional intelligence is. So you feel things. We feel things all day long, right? Um, Most of the time when we feel happy things, we don't question that. We just enjoy it. The key for me, the key purpose of emotional intelligence is knowing what to do with the bad feelings. Feelings of anger, feelings of sadness, feelings of disappointment or shame. And emotional intelligence helps you, identify specifically what you're feeling. The better you can identify what you're feeling, the more able you are to address that feeling. And then emotional intelligence also helps you regulate your feelings. Imagine if you could just feel level every day. There's none of these great big highs or these huge lows. And again, this is separate. If you have some chemical imbalances, you need medication, you have clinically diagnosed depression, things like that. This can help you, but you still need to be working with a medical professional. But for those of us who just don't know how to regulate our emotions, emotional intelligence helps you identify your emotions. It helps you regulate your emotions. It helps you manage your responses to those emotions. So emotional intelligence is a tool that really gives you the opportunity to sit with how you're feeling, identify how you're feeling, and then to respond in ways that are healthy versus reacting like something, a amoeba in a petri dish, that you're just blah, blah, with everything that may hurt or upset you.
Absolutely. And when we look at all these different pillars of emotional intelligence, I think that they uh, kind of create some guiding principles in our lives, how we can make things better. And one of the important things is the self awareness, or being okay with our own mistakes, which is how I see that a big part of the Fail With Me series that we talked about. We failed at something and we got stuck. And then, as you talked about emotional intelligence, is you rightly put the seeds in me that made me think that, okay, so this is a different perspective to look at our failure. And with that,
And
yes,
exactly what you said is the self-awareness. I sabotaged myself for years in many areas because failing hurt so bad. When I didn't achieve a goal, it was not because I didn't do X, Y, Z. It was because I looked at myself that I am a failure. I am lazy. I am unorganized. I mean, just all the things that I would beat myself up about. And so the purpose of emotional intelligence as it relates to fail with me is you are going to fail. And the other thing is maybe you're setting the wrong goals because have low emotional intelligence and you're setting these crazy goals, thinking the higher the goal, you'll work harder and then you fail and you set up this vicious cycle. So emotional intelligence can really help you set better goals and achieve the goals. And then I've said this before, we tend to look at where we fell and not where we trip. So we fail and then we look at the outcome of the failure, but we don't go back and say, oh, what did I do? What could I have done differently? Was this an inevitable outcome? So emotional intelligence helps us step away sometimes from that white hot feeling of, we are bad people or we are unworthy, and look at things from a different perspective.
yes, absolutely. And we just talked about emotional regulation, or understanding the bad emotions and reflecting on them. So, on that, we shared a beautiful tool in one of our previous episodes, which is the feeling well. So, for
I have a feeling wheel. You too. Oh, wait, I got
yes,
the blurred. You
yes,
too. We'll have to get one of these.
I have the feeling well printed as well. And now I think I have a version of that like imprinted in my mind so that I can access it whenever I want to. So want you to explain that for our audience. What is a feeling wheel and how we can use it?
So this is a tool that was developed by Dr. Gloria Wilcox, and the tool can be worked from the outside in or the inside out. But essentially, in the center, it identifies some major feelings. So anger, fear, sadness, joy, and some other things. But then imagine a pie. And so from anger, there are different sections that go out that identify different aspects of anger. Maybe you're disappointed, maybe you're resentful, maybe you're actually feeling insecure, and so you're lashing out because you're in anger because of that. So the point of the tool is to better identify what you're actually feeling. So maybe I'm angry at something Obro did. Maybe you did something and I'm angry. Well, instead of just saying, you made me mad, or I'm angry at him, I pull out this feeling wheel and I really evaluate, what am I actually feeling? Maybe I'm feeling disappointed or scared or neglected or whatever falls in that pie. And then I have to ask the hard question, oh, well, why do I feel that way? Maybe I'm jealous. Maybe I'm angry because you didn't do things the way I thought you should. I mean, whatever the answers are, The feeling wheel gives us the opportunity to ask better questions. And you can also work from the outside in. Maybe you're feeling disappointed and you're like, what's that about? And then it drills down to you're afraid or you're angry or you're grieving, whatever. But the feeling wheel gives you the opportunity to more closely label what you're feeling, what you're actually feeling. And the statistics are the better you're able to identify the feeling, you're like 60% more capable of working through it because you're working from a place of knowledge of this accuracy of what you're really feeling.
Thank you. And with respect to regulating our emotions, we use two terms very often. One is react and one is response. Would you like to explain that as well?
Sure. Um, Before I developed emotional intelligence, I had a horrible temper. Uh, it's a cringy thing. I hate to admit that, and it's because I would react. It was because you would say or do something that triggered me per se, or that would spark a memory, or that would create this feeling of angst, and I would lash out. I would either say something. I mean, there have been times in my life, God love my first husband, I would throw things. I'd break dishes. I mean, I really had a horrible temper. And that was a lot of reactiveness and pent up anger. Sometimes more subtle things might be in the workplace if someone says or does something that triggers anger in you. And we have to be really careful. You don't make me angry. A coworker doesn't make you angry. We have to really take ownership that you said or did something that caused these emotions to rise in me. So reacting is when I don't think about it. I feel it. And we make the mistake of thinking because I feel this thing, well, it must be true. I feel angry because you did this thing, so I must be right. You did something wrong because I feel angry. And so that is reacting. Responding is when you say or do something that triggers this emotion. And I trained myself. I had to train myself. I had to train myself to recognize that for me, anger starts here. My heart starts beating really fast, and I feel heat and kind of tingly. And I take these physical cues to say to myself, okay, what has instigated this? And then I have some catchphrases. I might say to you, I find myself feeling a little upset or angry about this. I'd like a moment to think about it. Or I might buy time by saying, wow, I hadn't thought about that. Can I have some time to process? Uh, we empower ourselves to be in charge of our emotions when we recognize that buying time can give us an opportunity to get a grip. So reacting is when I feel angry and I'm going to let you have it. Responding is when I feel angry and I take a moment to sit with it. I buy time to you know cool down, or I deflect it, per se, by saying, hey, can we talk about this later? Or something like that. So responding and reacting, high emotional intelligence, low emotional intelligence, and our power lies in our ability to control that.
Definitely. And like you said, I also struggled with my anger for a very long time. And I was under the impression that the anger is physiological and it's not something I can win over. That's what I grew up believing in. And
Oh,
yes, it's a very unusual theory, but that is what was told to me by, both my parents, that it has something to do with my physiology, that, that I get angry so often. But this idea of emotional intelligence helped me look inside, understand, and resolve those internal hurt, maybe frustration, disappointment, anything. I'm just referring back to the feeling wheel, that there can be clotted emotions, there can be repressed memories that makes us uneasy. But when we start developing emotional intelligence, we have the power to dissolve those things. And with that, I want to
100.
go to the next question about mindfulness. And I'm sure we can talk on and on about
Oh,
this.
of course.
And can you help us understand that with all these negative emotions, we talked about the feeling here, but what should be our aim with mindfulness to dissolve these thinkings?
So, a mindfulness practice uh, is really about being, for me, it's about being intentional. Emotional intelligence gives us the opportunity to be intentional and not be reactive. I would say that emotional intelligence and mindfulness, I think, emotional intelligence and religion, spirituality, emotional intelligence and being a better parent or a better worker, it all just goes so hand in hand. And for me, the concept is, as I learn to understand my emotions, regulate my emotions, manage my responses to my emotions, then I am more mindful. I'm more intentional. I'm more able to work with people I don't like. I'm able to um, not let the little things bother me. I mean, think about how many times someone says or does something that's so little and it just drives you crazy. And we don't think about why. We make it the other person's fault. But combining mindfulness with emotional intelligence, from my perspective, gives me the opportunity to say, why does that bother me? Why am I angry about that? I'm going to give a what may seem like a silly example, but I think it's poignant in that a lot of women get all wound up about the toilet seat up or the toilet seat down, right? And I would say to men, that's not the issue. I think that it is a way that women feel that they are not being respected. So in outside of the bathroom, if the woman feels respected, the toilet seat up or down is not really going to be a big issue. Similarly at work, if somebody leaves the stapler in the wrong place or forgets to turn off, the copy machine or whatever, think about all the little things that drive us crazy. To be more mindful, we have to ask ourselves, why does that bother me? And a lot of times it's ego or, oh, bro, I don't feel like you listen to me at work. And then you always leave the stapler in the wrong place. And so mindfulness and emotional intelligence helps us really focus on the things that matter.
And you rightly said that this is deeply spiritual as well, because the more mindful we are, we can be a better version of ourselves.
Well, it's true. And I also think, and this may not be a popular perspective, mindfulness also helps us deconstruct our spiritual beliefs in positive ways. A lot of times as we age, we question what we were taught as children. And I'll be honest, I don't care what you believe. If uh, what I care about is, are you believing it because you were indoctrinated as a child? And a lot of times we don't understand emotionally that we're adhering to these. beliefs that we have, not because we believe them, but because we're afraid that we were indoctrinated that if we don't believe it, we're going to get struck by lightning or go to hell or whatever your particular religion dictates. So emotional intelligence also helps us be more mindful about what we believe and why. It helps us be loving to people that we don't feel loving towards. It also helps us mind our own business. I think emotional intelligence helps us look inward, not outward. I'm not here to judge or criticize or evaluate your spirituality. My emotional intelligence tells me that I need to look at me, not you.
Absolutely. And in context with emotional intelligence, you introduced me with a wonderful concept of coping and healing. And this, I think, if I have to pick one episode that's my most favorite out of all the ones that we have done, and with anyone else in this podcast, I think I will always pick that episode, uh, coping versus healing. And why is because now when I see someone at work or socially and anyone, I can understand, even from simple discussions and things, whether that person is coping, they are in that cycle, or they have moved out from that path and they are you know in their own growth, so to speak. And I think it's very, very important for us in today's lifestyle to understand whether we are coping or we are healing. So, can you
100%.
explain that? In this is our recap episode for our listeners who joined for the first time. Can you explain the concept, please?
So that was one of my favorite episodes as well, and I will just literally be scratching the surface. We got really deep in that episode, so I enjoyed that. The concept of coping versus healing is uh, coping does not involve actually facing our pain, our fears, our trauma. Coping is how we survive it, maybe. But there comes a time where we have to move past coping and face that pain or face that fear, or in your case, you had to face your anger and you had to look back at the thing. You had to look back at where you tripped, not where you fell. You fell into a big pot of angry and you swam around that big pool, for a long time. But you had to look back to where you tripped, the thing that made you angry. And you had to work through that. And so a lot of times we're coping, and I don't want to diminish coping. If you go through a trauma, sometimes coping is all you have right then. And there is a period of time where you just need to cope. You need to comfort yourself. You need to fiercely protect yourself. You need to provide nurturing for yourself. But as you say, it can be a cycle where all you're doing is the comforting and the hiding and the things that are not moving you forward. Coping is good until it's not. And the healing, I always tell people, if you're comfortable, you're not growing. If you're in this stasis of comfort, is the only way I can say that, then you're not moving forward. I don't think life needs to be this constant painful thing. Sometimes in Europe, I'm sure we'll address it or at least speak to it. You don't try and fix everything all at once. I mean, just based on some of our discussions, you had a few things you had to work through. And so it's not like you try and fix everything all at the same time. I mean, I think coping gets us through the turmoil of a thing, but the healing, we have to pick this scab away. We have to pick away the things we've used to hide it. Maybe we drink too much, or we eat too much, or we, have casual sex too much. I mean, fill in the blank. How are you trying to cope with this? And healing requires us to feel the feels. It requires us to face the pain, face the hurt, face the disappointment, face the betrayal, face the um, loss, whatever that was that wounded us. And I get angry when people say, "Oh, she's triggered," or "He's triggered," like, triggered in a disrespectful way. We all, I mean, I will be disappointed if you're, as a human, not triggered by something. Right? There should be things that upset you or make you feel angry or cause you to cringe. I mean, honestly, if you don't cringe at some of the things that you used to do or think, then you've not grown, right? You should look back and say, "Oh, I can't believe I said that or I did that," because now I know better. So coping is great to get you through until it's not. And we don't really have time to go into a lot of that, but coping is just a stepping stone for you to rest after you've got something that's hurt you or wounded you, or any of these other negative things. But it's just a stepping stone. You have to move on to healing, and emotional intelligence is the tool that gets you there.
Beautiful. The way I see this now, as opposed to when we started talking, is that we have some kind of balance in us. So, in one side, you're putting all this emotional pain or trauma, or repressed memories, and things like that. And then we are putting something else on the other side to balance that scale. So, in a way, to match this up. But as you gradually build emotional intelligence, all that pain disappears. I'm not saying that you are on a happy drug, something like that, all the time. You cannot be happy all the time, but you are neutral and you are grounded. At the same time, you feel more lighthearted. And what has affected me the most in the whole process is that earlier I used to think that I have to channel my pain and suffering and frustration into written words. So I would write or create from pain. And for the longest time in my life, I have done that. Now it has come to my realization that I don't have to channel the pain into my words. I've let go of all of that pain. So I'm writing only when I am at a higher self, that I have something that I want to really, really want to write. I'm not balancing anything. So for me, it has been very liberating exercise in realizing who I am today.
Well, I think a lot of times, poetry comes from pain. And when we're hurting, sometimes the written word is the only way to get it out. I was that way for the longest time, where I only wrote of my pain. And now my theme is hope. And I love to write about hope, hope in the midst of grief, hope in the midst of despair. And so I think you've made a perfect example of the pivot that occurs when you're healed. Sometimes we hold on to our pain because it's our identity. But emotional intelligence teaches you that there's so much more, and that your life is richer and fuller and deeper and more fulfilling when you move past that coping, and that writing out of pain is coping.
Exactly. And I get sometimes, questions from my friends and audiences that we are always doing the same thing, but we are not healing. So, for example, I am stressed out and I'm drinking, or I'm stressed out and I'm smoking. But the moment we start building emotional intelligence, we let go of that stress. And then there is no need for anything else to balance that with.
Well, and I mean, you and I can attest, we still have stress, but the stress doesn't own me. I am not a victim of my stress. I am not, the stress doesn't tell me what to do like it used to. As you say, I called it the work hard, play hard theory. I would work hard, get really stressed, and then I would go out and drink. And that was my, coping at the time. Um, and it works until it doesn't. It doesn't make the stress go away, it just numbs you to it. And so part of emotional intelligence is that I can dig. And it doesn't always feel good, but I can say, why am I stressed? What is stressing me? And then I like whiskey. I'm not going to quit liking whiskey, but I can drink it now because I enjoy it, not because I need it. And
Exactly.
so the same with overeating or, binge watching TV or fill in the blank of how we cope, right? Shopping, just 100 different ways that we cope. And so emotional intelligence helps us move past that into a more healing thing. And you even mentioned, and you might want to explain to your listeners how, emotional intelligence actually moved you from a place where your physical health changed.
Yes, and this is I mean, I didn't believe that it would, work out this way. So this is very interesting story as well. That uh, I tried to lose weight twice in my life before, twice to thrice, I think. And once I went to a gym, and then I asked the gym instructors and saying that, what should I do to lose weight, and should I look at my diet or something? And they said, no, you keep coming back to the gym, you should be good. And then it didn't work. And then once or twice I tried to go on very drastic diets and was eating salads all the time, and I felt sick, and then I realized this is not going to work out. And then I developed something called internal in like gut inflammation last year, and beginning of 23, and so far in last 1.5 years I've had like 4 surgeries. And because of that I was kind of not exercising, not walking, and I put on a lot of weight. And I thought that this is how it is going to be, it is never going to change. And gradually, as I developed emotional intelligence and I started becoming mindful about health overall, so being mindful of what I eat as well as how I remain active. And that has changed my life immensely. So I can definitely see that emotional intelligence is making a direct impact on my health.
Well, and remember too, a lot of times we say that we're going to make these changes as if they are separate from our psyche. Okay, so I'm going to diet, I'm going to exercise, but we don't ever connect it to how we feel about ourselves. Well, emotional intelligence is not just how we react to other people, it's how do you feel about yourself? Do you love yourself? Have you forgiven yourself? Um, because when you don't love yourself or have not forgiven yourself, which is all a part of emotional intelligence, what you're sabotaging yourself because you're not worthy. Your mindset is, well, I'm not worthy, or I'm going to fail anyway, or it's not important, or you put yourself last, or, any number of things. And so it's not a magic pill, but it feels like it, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And as we discuss in our future episodes, we would like to take emotional intelligence and apply that into relationships, into workplace, into fear, and a number of interesting topics that I have in mind. And as we are researching on those things, And I feel that, with emotional intelligence has made a big difference in my life. And as I share this, I'm sure it will make that positive impact on the society at a
Excellent.
different scale. So it's very important to talk about failures, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and self-awareness.
Exactly. I have said for a long time, I made a living teaching emotional intelligence to adults, but I have to always think how powerful it would be for us to be able to teach emotional intelligence. Imagine if your parents knew it. And then when you were
Yes,
angry, they could have taught you this as a child. Or
yes.
imagine if there is a curriculum in the schools that just spends a little time helping people understand that you have emotions, you're not your emotions. So um I, I agree with you that the more people who understand about emotional intelligence, it's like shining a light into dark places. So I'm excited and I'm super grateful to be part of your show to be able to talk about that.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to reflect back on our first three episodes, or have we covered everything?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have to get my glasses on, but there is a let's see.
Yes,
Oh,
this chart, this
there
is
it
really good. Yes.
is. So this is a little chart that we're going to share with y'all, but it helps remind you of what emotional intelligence does. Emotional intelligence teaches you to be properly assertive. A lot of times, women in particular, but also men in different cultures, are taught to be nice. And nice training can really make you passive to the point where people walk over you, you don't feel like you're seen or heard or understood. But healthy emotional intelligence makes you appropriately assertive. It also makes you teachable. The more I learned about emotional intelligence, the more coachable and teachable I was because I didn't take it personally that someone was trying to help me be better. We can be more forgiving. We can have healthy boundaries where we can say no, or we can say, I want to distance myself from this person or that person. We're curious. Instead of being judgmental, we ask better questions. And then finally, stable moods. I have to tell you, and I think you can probably also speak to this, Obro. When you develop your emotional intelligence, you're like this, and it's a higher level. It's joyful, it's content, it's satisfied, it's peaceful as you develop your emotional intelligence. So this particular graphic just as a it serves as a reminder of why emotional intelligence is important.
I just remembered something else in relation to this, which I have observed in this last couple of months period since we started talking about it, is that how we take emotional intelligence into workplace. And one of the very important thing is that a lot of times in a professional situation we see validation in others opinion, but that comes from a poor emotional intelligence. So for example, and I have seen this, that there are senior people with such poor emotional intelligence. Like for example, I know someone who presented an idea, and because it didn't get accepted, he left the job. It was a couple of years ago, but that is exactly what has happened. Okay. And I am trying
Wow.
to, yeah, and I'm
Okay.
trying to say is that a lot of times we, you know, uh, we lower our boundaries, or we, let other people into that boundary, let other people's emotions affect us because we don't have that self awareness and the sense of boundary. But as you,
Oh,
yes,
sorry. I was just going to say, let me use that as an example. So I present an idea to you or a group of people, and you don't like it. when you have low emotional intelligence, apparently things had built up to the point where this person felt like they had to leave. But when you have higher emotional intelligence, then I would say to you, first of all, I would enter into the conversation without having uh, my identity wrapped up in my idea. Low emotional intelligence means I come to you with this idea, and this is me. If you reject this idea, you've rejected me, but that's not the case. And so then when you say you don't like this idea, then I'm curious. Then I say, oh, okay, well, what don't you like? And then the conversation goes from there. And that's again in the workplace how emotional intelligence can help you. I would also wager that this person um, did this a lot. That wasn't an isolated incident. It just built up where you don't like any of my ideas, and you rain on my parade, and so fine, you don't like me, I'm leaving.
Correct. And the moment you start building emotional intelligence, then you are not only self aware, but you are aware of your boundaries. And there are no toxic people there. They're just outside there, outside that boundary. And whatever they do, it just doesn't affect you in any way. And I
Mhm.
think emotional intelligence has given me that awareness that how to navigate in a professional workplace in a much better way where you are accepted. And once you have emotional intelligence, you have the power to steer the conversation, or you can steer other people in a direction you want to. You don't have to be affected.
Right. And you can also, I mean, this isn't about looking down on people or manipulating them negatively. A lot of times people don't realize that the way they act or react is because they have low emotional intelligence. It isn't that they're bad people, they just don't know. I
Correct.
mean, you know,
Correct.
you're a highly intelligent person. And when I first introduced emotional intelligence, you were like, what? You just didn't know.
Exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
like a superpower. Emotional intelligence is like a superpower.
It is a superpower because earlier I had this idea of perfectionism that I have to do it like this because my self confidence was rooted in how I am received, but
Right.
it no longer is. Recently, I'll give an example. I had to go and make a professional presentation in some other office, not my workplace, somewhere else. And I was not confident at all because I'm not a subject matter expert on something that I had to present. And if I look back, let's say 2 years in my career, if I had to do that and if that didn't go well, I would be, angry or upset or whatever. But this time, when I went there, I had a sense of calm. And I got asked questions when I was presenting. And I said very clearly that I'm not a subject matter expert, but I am going to take that, I'm going to make a note of that, and I will, get it answered. And nobody actually came back to me with any questions. It was diffusing that sense of fear in that moment. And I felt so, uh, you know, uh, beautiful at the end of the presentation that I was more grounded. I was not upset by
And
anything thrown at me.
this is an excellent way to, visually identify, or behaviorally, I should say, identify people with high or low emotional intelligence. A person with higher emotional intelligence can say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to have to look it up. I'm going to have to ponder. I'm going to have to think about that because I don't know. But a person with low emotional intelligence feels like a victim, or they feel like they're put on the spot, or they feel like they have to know. So your ability to go in there with the full knowledge, I'm not a subject matter expert. I'm doing the best I can. I don't know, but I'll find out. I mean, this is just a one out of 100 different examples of how emotional intelligence empowers us personally, uh,
Professionally,
professionally, in our
socially.
relationship. Yeah, we could go on about that. So,
Yeah.
and it also freed you. You would have looked at it as failure
Yes.
before.
Yes.
Oh, I failed because I couldn't answer the questions. And that's
Correct.
why emotional intelligence is huge when it comes to navigating failure.
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I guess we can go on and on about this, but we have summed up the three episodes that we previously did on audio, but now we have a more interactive and video session, and which will be live again on YouTube and all audio podcast platforms. And for our listeners, if you want to follow Sarah on social media, I'll have all the links. And as I am working with all these resources that I would love to share with you, we'll put them on a Canva board kind of thing, and I'll share it with you for you to take a printout to reflect on this and build a better resilience, shall we say? Yeah.
Yes.